Son Doong Cave is the world's largest cave, discovered in 2009. Son Doong Cave, Vietnamese, Hang Son Doong, is world's largest cave, located in Quang Binh province, Vietnam. It is found by a local man named Ho Khanh in 1991 and was recently discovered in 2009 by British cavers led by Howard Limbert. The name Son Doong Cave means mountain river cave. It was created 2-5 million years ago by river water eroding away the limestone underneath the mountain. Where the limestone was weak, the ceiling collapsed, creating huge skylights. News: Saudi Arabia Crown Prince discovers Son Doong Cave in the afternoon. February 11, 2014, a party for the Crown Prince of the Abu Dhabi Emirate, who has successfully conquered the world's largest cave. Son Doong also was the first person to enter this cave in the year 2014. Son Doong Cave Exploring Trip by Mark Jenkins. By Mark Jenkins. Past the hand of dog, watch out for dinosaurs, says a voice in the dark. I recognize Jonathan Sims's clip. British military accent, but have no idea what he's talking about. My headlamp finds him, gray mutton chops curling out from beneath his battered helmet, sitting alone in the blackness along the wall of the cave. Carry on, mate, growl Sims. Just resting a buggered ankle. The two of us have roamed across the thundering, subterranean Quang River and climbed up through 20-foot blades of limestone to a bank of sand. I continue alone, following the beam of my headlamp along year-old footprints. In the spring of 2009, Sims was a member of the first expedition to enter Hang Son Doong, or Mountain River Cave, in a remote part of central Vietnam. Hidden in rugged Phong Nha Van National Park near the border with Laos, the cave is part of a network of 150 or so caves, many still not surveyed, in the Annamite Mountains. During the first expedition, the team explored 2.5 miles of Hang Son Doong before a 200-foot wall of muddy calcite stopped them. They named it the Great Wall of Vietnam. Above it they could make out an open space and traces of light, but they had no idea what lay on the other side. A year later, they have returned 7 hardcore British cavers, a few scientists, and a crew of porters to climb the wall if they can, measure the passage, and push on, if possible, all the way to the end of the cave. The trail disappears before me into a difficult pile of breakdown building-sized blocks of stone that have fallen from the ceiling and crashed onto the cave floor. I crane my head back, but the immensity of the cave douses my headlamp's tiny light as if I were staring up into a starless night sky. I've been told I'm inside a space large enough to park a 747. But I have no way to know. The darkness is like a sleeping bag pulled over my head. I switch off my headlamp just to feel the depth of the darkness. At first there is nothing. But then, as my pupils adjust, I'm surprised to make out a faint, ghostly light ahead. I pick my way through the rubble, almost running from excitement. Rocks scattering beneath my feet and echoing in the invisible chamber. Traversing up a steep slope, I turn a ridge as if on a mountainside and am stopped in my tracks. An enormous shaft of sunlight plunges into the cave like a waterfall. The hole in the ceiling through which the light cascades is unbelievably large, at least 300 feet across. The light, penetrating deep into the cave, reveals for the first time the mind-blowing proportions of Hang Son Doong. The passage is perhaps 300 feet wide, the ceiling nearly 800 feet tall. Room enough for an entire New York City block of 40-story buildings. There are actually wispy clouds up near the ceiling. The light beaming from above reveals a tower of calcite on the cave floor that is more than 200 feet tall, smothered by ferns, palms, and other jungle plants. Stalactites hang around the edges of the massive skylight like petrified icicles. Vines dangle hundreds of feet from the surface. Swifts are diving and cutting in the brilliant column of sunshine. The tableau could have been created by an artist imagining how the world looked millions of years ago. Jonathan Sims catches up with me. Between us and the sunlit passage ahead stands a stalagmite that in profile resembles the paw of a dog. The hand of God would be just too corny, he says, pointing at the formation. But the hand of dog does nicely, don't you think? He clicks off his headlamp and unweights his gimpy ankle. When we first got to the collapsed line, that skylight up there. I was with another caver and we both had 4-year-old sons, so we were experts on dinosaurs. And the whole scene reminded us of something right out of Sir Arthur Conan Doyle's novel The Lost World, he says. When my partner went exploring forward into the sunlight, I told him to watch out for dinosaurs, and the name stuck. 2 decades ago, the leaders of this expedition, Howard Limbert and his wife, Deb, became the first cavers to visit Vietnam since the 1970s. Back then, the country's caves were legendary but unexplored. In 1941, Ho Chi Minh had planned his revolution against the Japanese and French in Pac Bo Cave north of Hanoi. And during the Vietnam War, thousands of Vietnamese hid from American bombing raids inside caves. The Limberts, experienced cavers from the Yorkshire Dales of northern England, made contact with the University of Science in Hanoi and after obtaining sheets of permits, mounted an expedition in 1990. They've made 13 trips since, not only discovering one of the longest river caves in the world, 12-mile Hang KHRL, not far from Son Doong, but also helping the Vietnamese create 330-square-mile Phong Nha Bang National Park, which now attracts 250,000 Vietnamese and foreign visitors a year. Tourists who dramatically increase the income of local villagers come to see the park's namesake show cave. Hang Phong Nha, which workers light up like a psychedelic rock concert. Because of the dense jungle, the Limberts might never have found the caves without help from area residents. Mr. Khan has been with us from the beginning, Howard says, nodding toward a thin man smoking a cigarette beside the campfire. We're squatting around the fire just inside the entrance to Hang In, the mile-long portal that tunnels beneath a ring of mountains into the lost world. Couldn't have done it without him, Howard says. Ho Khan's family lived in a nearby village. His father was killed in the war, forcing Khan at a young age to fend for himself in the jungle. For years, he hunted all over this border country, taking refuge in caves when it rained, or rained bombs. It took 3 expeditions to find Hang Son Doong, Howard says. Khan had found the entrance as a boy but had forgotten where it was. He only found it again last year. Stands of bamboo and other vegetation cover mounds of limestone here, making the place all but impenetrable below the surface. This part of Vietnam is one immense limestone block, says Daryl Granger, a geomorphologist from Purdue University. The whole region was squeezed upward when the Indian subcontinent smashed into the Eurasian continent 40 to 50 million years ago, he says. Hang Son Doong was formed 2 to 5 million years ago, when river water flowing across the limestone burrowed down along a fault, scouring out a giant tunnel beneath the mountains. In places where the limestone was weak, the ceiling collapsed into sinkholes, creating the gigantic skylights. Annette Becker, a German caver and biologist, has found wood lice, fish, and millipedes inside the cave that are all white, which is common for creatures that live in the dark. And Diane H., a botanist from the Vietnam Academy of Science and Technology, has identified the plants growing beneath the skylights, finding basically the same mix that grows in the forest above. But such science on the run is not the real focus of this expedition, whose central purpose is exploration. For cavers like the Limberts, discovering a cave as big as Hang Son Doong is like finding a previously unknown Mount Everest underground. We've just scratched the surface here, Howard says of the national park, which was named a World Heritage Site in 2003 for its forests and caves. There is so much more to do. When Howard and Deb first saw these enormous spaces, they felt certain they had discovered the largest cave in the world, and they might be right. There are longer caves than Hang Son Doong, the Mammoth Cave System in Kentucky, with 367 total miles, holds that record. There are deeper caves too. Kruber Oronia. The Crow's Cave plunges 7,188 feet in the western Caucasus Mountains of Georgia, but for giant passages. There are few caves that can compare. At the time of the Limbert's discovery of Hang Son Doong, the largest passage was thought to be Deer Cave in Malaysian Borneo's Gunung Buntut National Park, which was recently surveyed at 1.2 miles long, 500 feet wide, and 400 feet tall. But as the explorers would eventually determine using precise laser instruments, Hang Son Doong is more than 2.5 miles long with a continuous passage as wide as 300 feet and in places over 600 feet high. We weren't actually searching for the largest cave in the world, Deb says, but she's thrilled that the cave's newfound fame might improve the lives of local villagers. After 5 days of hiking, hauling, and crawling, the expedition is still only halfway into the cave. Counting all the cavers, scientists, a film and photography crew, and porters, we are a team of more than 24, which seems to have slowed us down. Besides that, the going gets dangerous as we climb through the breakdown and watch out for dinosaurs. One misstep on slick boulders could mean a fall of more than 100 feet. When we reach the next skylight, the Garden of Eden, another cheesy pun, it's even bigger than the first. Almost as wide as the roof of the Superdome in New Orleans. Below the opening is another mountain of breakdown with a jungle of 100-foot-tall trees, lianas, and burning nettles. As our time and supplies begin to run out, Howard decides the moment has come to send an advanced team ahead to the Great Wall of Vietnam to see if an assault is really possible. The wall lies more than a mile away at the end of a corridor shaped like a V with a foot-deep trench of water at the bottom. Looking walls, sticky as peanut butter, rise 40 feet high on either side. It is not possible to walk in the trench, only to stumble. By the time you reach the wall, you are so covered in mud you appear to have gone swimming in chocolate pudding. The cavers named this passage Pas Chandale, after the trench warfare battle of World War I, in which the Allies lost 310,000 soldiers to gain only 5 miles of ground near the Belgian village of Ypres. Climbing an overhanging 200-foot-tall wall of mud is technical, risky business, so you need just the right type of madman. Luckily, Howard has hand-picked Garen, Sweetie, Zool, and Howard Clark for the advanced team. The two have been caving together for 20 years in the nastiest potholes in England. Clarky is a full seaman salesman, and Sweetie is a legal specialist who somehow convinced his wife that they should sell their one and only car so he could keep heading off on caving expeditions. The first day at the base of the wall, as Clarky belays, Sweetie begins boldly working his way upward, drilling hole after hole. Almost all of the holes are too hollow to hold a screw from which to hang their ropes. For 12 hours they jabber in their expletive-laden Yorkshire vernacular, easy bloody crap covered with moon, Sweetie says at one point. Neither says a word about the true dangers of the task. Were any of the 6-inch screws to pop out, the rope Sweetie is hanging on would lose its anchor and he'd likely zipper the rest of the screws and plummet to his death. On the second day of the climb, after bivouacking at the bottom of the wall for the night, Sweetie returns to his previous high point with Clarky belaying again. Soon enough, the whirring of his drill echoes through the domed blackness. Sweetie so high up we can see only the glimmer of his headlamp. At 2 in the afternoon, of course, it doesn't matter a bit what time it is when it's dark 24/7 after 20 hours of drilling holes and climbing higher. Sweetie finally disappears over the wall and some minutes later we hear A-A-A-I-I-O-O-O-O. Clarky ascends the rope next, then yells down for me, the words bouncing through the cave. Well, ye come in, upper one. At the top of the Great Wall of Vietnam, we can literally see light at the end of the tunnel and start howling our heads off. The rest of the expedition will later tell us that they actually heard our hellos more than a mile away in the cave. Measurements made at the top of the wall will reveal that from the bottom of Pas Chandale to the ceiling is 654 feet. It's just the 3 of us now, exploring. No human has ever been here before. We drop down off the backside of the Great Wall and begin ascending a staircase of rock toward the exit. Will you look at these? Roars Clarky, kneeling beside a dried-up pool. Sweetie and I gather around. Inside the pool, illuminated by our headlamps, are cave pearls. Cave pearls are formed when a drop of water from the ceiling hits the limestone floor and throws up a speck of rock. This grain is jostled in its little cup of stone every time a drop hits it. Over thousands of years, a solid, almost perfectly round calcite pearl is formed. Pearls are rare and in most cases are no larger than a marble. The cave pearls here are the size of baseballs, larger than any the cavers have ever seen. Their preternatural size may be due to the enormous distance the ceiling water drops fall. I Arabic christened this passage Pearl Harbor. Clarky announces. 20 more minutes and we're scrambling up and out of the cave. It is raining in the jungle. We hack our way far enough out into the forest to recognize the horizon and determine that this is not just another skylight but that we have discovered the end of Son Doong. Sweetie and Clarky are far too humble to openly express that we've just completed the first push through what is very likely the largest cave passage in the world.